Welcome back to Wake Up America. So typically, former presidents, they get Secret Service protection for the rest of their lives, while former vice presidents get protection for 6 months after leaving office. But for some reason, President Biden extended protection for former Vice President Kamala Harris for an extra year. Then President Trump, he revoked it. Joining us now to discuss former Secret Service agents Tim Miller and Barry Donadio. So, Tim, former President Biden extended protection due to what they called heightened threats, but the Secret Service reportedly just ran a threat assessment and found nothing to warrant the extension. What do we make of President Trump's decision to end the protection for Vice President Harris?
Well, I think you're exactly on track when you say the Secret Service protective detail is based on the threats. But more importantly, let me just say this. I have worked in transitions where the vice presidential detail stopped at a certain point. This is absolutely consistent with protocols in the past. I would remind you, too, that under Kamala Harris's, threat posture, her detail was significantly enhanced, which means the associated costs with that skyrocketed. So I think President Trump is doing exactly what he should do. Let's face it, Kamala's threat picture now is nothing like it was when she was on the campaign. And I would remind your viewers, the Secret Service is still understaffed. They're trying to do what they need to do with limited resources. So if you pull a full detail from Kamala and put it where it needs to be, it's a great move.
Yeah, so the White House deciding that Kamala's upcoming nationwide book tour does not warrant taxpayer-funded Secret Service protection for the former vice president. Now, you've both served, obviously, as Secret Service agents. What kind of threat do you think would warrant the extension of protective service past that normal 6 months? Barrett?
I would say a legitimate threat from a terrorist organization or a lone gunman would extend that. Something very credible where the Secret Service can actually document it and articulate it, even in a court of law. But I agree with everything Tim said. He's 100% right. The Secret Service has been undermanned since its conception in 1865. They're so specialized, they're so good at what they do, and it's tough to replace them. They're just irreplaceable people. They're the best the government has for this type of work. So they're also accountable to Congress as well. They have to explain every single dime they spend. So this is kind of business as usual for the Secret Service. They pick up and drop protectees on a regular basis, depending upon exactly what Tim said, the threat level.
Yeah, Tim, now generally that 6-month period, and obviously I've worked for a former vice president, and obviously I've worked with a lot of Secret Service agents during my time in and out of politics and government, that allows that family, because it's also the family, to transition to their own private security, where they decide what do we need to keep, how do we need to handle it. This is going to be pretty much accomplished in a couple of days. Do you think that could be a problem for the former vice president?
Well, certainly not if they're thinking through, we're not going to have unlimited Secret Service protection. Look, here's the fact. Kamala Harris knew when she lost the election that she was going to have to assume her own protection. And at the end of the day, the cost is exorbitant to run a 24/7 detail. It is based on threats. And so to your point, if the threats are not there, and I wouldn't consider a book signing tour something that's officially related to your threats as having served as vice president, then it's time for you to assume that you have to, take responsibility for your security. And quite frankly, guys, if you think about it, extending it to a year and a half, that's ridiculous. That's not been done, at least that I'm aware of. And I think it's time. I think the American people recognize that President Trump is going after fraud, waste, and abuse. And I'm not saying this is fraud by any stretch, but it certainly is not something we could justify for a long period of time, in my opinion.
Yeah, and for everybody at home that's used to seeing the Secret Service as the guys with the suits and the earpieces right around the president or vice president, there are dozens of others that you don't see that plan and do all of these other things that also goes with it. All right, Tim, Barry, great to have you guys with us this morning, and have a great Labor Day.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.